Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be making a pencil pouch. This is a great little sewing project for back to school or just organizing your pens, pencils, and markers. If you are new to sewing, you should have no problem following the easy step-by-step tutorial. I'm also going to be throwing in a lot of tips that you can use on all sorts of sewing projects. With all that being said, grab that printable pattern and let's get started. Getting started with supplies, you'll need a 1/4 yard for your main fabric, and I recommend grabbing a canvas, denim, or twill. These are all very durable fabrics and easy to work with. I'm also going to show you how to make this bag out of a clear vinyl, so if you're going that route, grab a 1/4 yard of vinyl. I'm actually going to be using a mixture of a heavier weight canvas and also a random upholstery fabric I found. It's very loosely woven, but I'm going to try to make it work for this project. And that's the thing, it's fun to test different materials. If you find something that you can upcycle, definitely do that so you're not buying new fabric. You'll need a 1/4 yard for your secondary fabric, and this is going to be a lightweight lining material. It can get a little bit bulky around the outside seams, so using a lighter weight material can really help. I'm actually going to be using a very thin, lightweight nylon material. I found this was a great material to have on inside if you have any markers or pens. If the caps are open on the inside of the bag, it's a little bit harder for the ink to absorb into the fabric. I always find it's really nice using a material like this for your lining. You'll need one 11+ inch zipper. And the reason I say 11 on up, because if you find a zipper that's going to work with your fabrics that's like 16 inches, you still can use it because we're going to be snipping the ends. I'm actually going to be cutting mine off of a zipper roll. I highly recommend looking into zipper rolls if you're making a lot of these bags. You can cut the precise size zipper without any waste. If you are using a lighter weight material for your main fabric, I do recommend grabbing an interfacing, something medium weight just to stiffen it up a little bit so your bag just doesn't collapse after you make it. You kind of want this bag to have a little bit of structure so it's easier to look through to find the pencil or marker you're looking for. Lastly, you'll need your pattern. This pattern is available at properfitclothing.com. It's super easy to use. All you have to do is download it, print it, tape it together, and you're ready to go. And after you tape it together, the best thing to do is to cut off the top and one of the side edges. This is going to allow you to overlap the pages for a perfectly aligned pattern. And after you printed off your pattern and gathered all your supplies, it's time to move into cutting. After taping your pattern together, it should look like this. And for the best results, I recommend cutting on the outside of the black line. Moving on to cutting, you should end up with 2 handle panels, one cut out of your secondary fabric and one cut out of your main fabric. 2 side panels, one cut out of your secondary fabric and one cut out of your main fabric. 4 main panels, 2 cut out of your secondary fabric and 2 cut out of your main fabric. And real quick, if you're choosing to make yours transparent, you're only going to need to cut 2 main panels out of your clear vinyl material. I'm using a medium weight vinyl. I found it super easy to work with, so if you are using vinyl, I recommend getting something right in that mid-range. With all the panels cut, we're going to start with construction. Grab the main panels and locate the zipper edge. And real quick before we get too far into this, if you're looking to make yours out of the vinyl material, you'll want to skip ahead just a little bit because that's where I show you how to do this step using vinyl material. But anyways, let's jump back into making it out of regular fabric. With the zipper edge located, we're going to go ahead and place 2 of the panels off to the side, flip to the right sides, grab your 11+ inch zipper. And the reason it's bigger than the panel is because we're going to actually snip the ends after we sew it on. Place the right side of the zipper to the right side of the main fabric. In the secondary fabric on the wrong side, stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance along that zipper edge. After stitching, place the wrong sides together so the secondary fabric and the main fabric line up. Add a couple pins to keep the panels from flipping up over the zipper. From here, we're going to grab our 2 remaining main panels and do the same thing to the opposite side of the zipper. Place the right sides together with the zipper sandwiched in between and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure the main panels are lined up on both sides of the zipper and flip the wrong sides together. At this point, we can remove the pins so we can line up the secondary fabric with the main fabric. Once you have the outside edges lined up, we're going to add a top stitch to both sides of the zipper. And I'm using an edge presser foot so I can get nice, clean, straight stitches. After finishing up the top stitch, we're going to check both sides to make sure everything is looking good and all the lines are crisp and straight. And this is how you prepare the main panels with the zipper if you're using a standard fabric. So if you made yours out of standard fabric, you can skip the next step and jump ahead to adding the side panel, because this step I'm going to show you how to prepare the main panels with the vinyl clear material. So with the vinyl, you only need 2 main panels in total. So we're going to start out the same by locating the zipper edge and only using one of our main panels. Grab your 11+ inch zipper and place the zipper edge flat on the right side of the zipper, lining the zipper up in the middle of the main panel. From here, we're going to stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance directly on top of the vinyl. Vinyl can be a little bit sticky to work with, so definitely pull it through your machine as you're sewing. Grab your second main panel, place it on the opposite side of the zipper, lining up both main panels, and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The biggest thing to keep in mind here is that sewing these panels on this way is actually going to change the side width just a little bit, so you may need to adjust the width of your side panel. We'll get to that in a second, but moving forward, all the steps are exactly the same for both fabrics. So what we're doing next is a little bit extra. It's an optional feature. I cut a small tab out of leather. You can cut this out of leather, vinyl, or any thicker material. You can make this any width, shape, or height. And what I'm doing is just adding it directly on top of the zipper, hanging it off the edge just a little bit. Depending on what side you put it on, it can help you open or close the zipper. Generally, I put these on both sides, but for this back, I'm only doing it to one side. Like I said, this is optional. It's just a nice little extra feature. If you don't want to add it, you can go ahead and skip forward. With the tab lined up directly in the center of the zipper, we're going to grab the side panels. Locate the Soda main panel guide on the pattern. Those are the edges we're going to line up with our main panel. Starting with the main fabric, place it directly on top with the right sides together, and the right side of the secondary fabric on the opposite side. Since zippers do come in different widths, you may need to adjust the width of the side panel to match the width of your main panels. If you already have your side panels cut, you can just easily trim the main panel to match the width of your side panel. Either way, we're going to stitch that edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After stitching, double check both sides, make sure everything's lined up correctly, and from here we're going to do the same thing to the opposite side. Since the width of the side panel is longer than the width of the main panel, you have to pull it back just a little bit so that way the side edges line up. And stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Grab a pair of scissors and snip the zipper ends flush with the seam allowance. Since the side panels are on opposite sides of the main panel, we're going to flip them around so they're on the same side. Before we stitch the side seams, we're going to fold the bag in half on the side, locate the side seams, and add a top stitch. Flip the bag over, and we're going to do the same thing for the opposite side. After adding the top stitch, we're going to double check, make sure all the layers are lined up and looking good, and from here we can place this bag off to the side and grab our handle panels. Locate the longer edges on the pattern, and this is where we're going to be adding our stitch. So place the right sides together, and stitch both of the long edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you add a nice tack stitch at the start and stop, and then from here we're going to flip the right sides out. Line up the outside edges of the main and secondary fabric and add a top stitch to both of our new side edges. After finishing the top stitch, this is going to complete our handle. The cool thing about this panel is that it can be adjusted to your preference or even swapped out for a different material like leather. So if you have a cool accent leather that goes with your fabric, I highly recommend using it. Just cut your handle the same width and length out of your leather. But either way, if you're choosing to make your handle or use a leather strip, it's going to be added the same way in future steps. For this project, I'm going to be using the fabric handle to make it a little bit easier to follow along with the video. You can add this to either side of the zipper, it's totally up to you. I'm adding it on the opposite side I placed the tab on. The handle width is longer than the width of the side panel. This is done so that way it can crunch up and you can fit your finger behind it to hold it. If it's still too small, you can make this handle as long as you want to fit your preferences. But I like to line it up right at the start of the side panel, and from here we're going to stitch just the outside edges as close as you can to the edge. And we're just trying to get it attached to the bag in place so that way it doesn't move around when we're finishing off the bag. But either way, it's best to test it out to see if you'd like it bigger or smaller. If it feels like it's going to work, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step and flip the wrong sides out. From here, we're going to locate the 90-degree corner at the top of the main panel and sandwich the right sides of that corner together. We continue along into that corner, lining up the outside edge of the main panel with the side edge of the side panel. Place a few pins and repeat the same exact process for the opposite side. After adding the pins, double check both sides, and from here, we're going to stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It can get pretty tricky going around those corners, so just take your time and be sure to add a nice tack stitch at the start and end of your stitch. When you completed both sides, double check to make sure the lining and the secondary fabric all got stitched together. At this point, you have a couple different options. You can be done and pull the right sides out, or you can actually clean up this inside edge by adding double fold bias tape. This is a really great technique to use on all different sewing projects, and I'm going to run you through a few different methods. The first method is using a bias tape making kit. In this technique, you make your own double-sided bias tape to the size and fabric you want to use. All you do is cut your strips, feed it through your folder, and press it when it comes out the folder. It's very easy to do, and you get to customize the bias tape to your exact measurements. The second technique is using a double fold bias tape binder. This is the most efficient technique. You cut your strips, feed it through your binder, and sew it directly to your raw edge. And the last technique is using pre-made double fold bias tape. You are limited to colors, but it's very easy to use. You fold it over the edge and stitch it down. And you want to make sure you apply it all the way around the outside edge. I'm going to be using the double fold bias tape attachment. If you plan on making a lot of bags, I highly recommend looking into this. It gives the nicest end product and cuts down production time. I use the double fold bias tape attachment quite a bit. That's why I have a separate machine set up just for this function. So I can just walk over there, change the thread, and it's ready to go. But either way, adding double fold bias tape, no matter the technique, is a great way to clean up these raw edges on the inside of the bag and give yourself a nice professional finish. If you're satisfied with the finish, we're gonna flip the right sides out, double check all the way around the bag, make sure the edges are looking good and all the layers are stitched together. If everything is looking good, we can move on to the final step, and that's adding your branding. I'm just using a branded piece of leather that's attached with double-sided rivets. It's a simple but effective look. The great thing about this bag is that it's super easy to adjust the width and the height to customize it to your exact use. For example, if you're looking to make a makeup bag, you can use the same pattern and just make it a little bit wider and taller. And one last quick tip, if you made yours out of vinyl, it's really good to use the double fold bias tape. You're gonna see it through the bag, so pick a color that works with your fabrics. And there you have it, your pencil pouch is complete. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. And before we go, I'd love to see what you come up with, so tag me on Instagram at Properfit Clothing. I'm gonna keep the videos coming at you, and I'll see you next time.